Hello, hello. Are we live, everyone? Let me check and see. Yes, we are. Excellent, excellent. Good afternoon, ladies. How is everyone doing on this beautiful Sunday afternoon? I am Jacqueline Kabai Harrison. I am your host for A Queens Roundtable Show, which happens every second and fourth Sunday of the month. I bring on a different entrepreneur and we talk openly and honestly about entrepreneurship, some of the ups and the downs, because we know it is not an easy journey, right? But all of my guests share excellent, excellent tools, tips, and resources to help you improve yourself both personally and professionally, right? So, without further ado, I have a guest with me today that was on the show before in December. And it was, I mean, we could hardly contain ourselves within our show. So, due to that, as well as a very positive responses and feedback, I decided to have her on again. So she is with us again today, and she's going to share her knowledge and her expertise with us again. So please, ladies, whether you are catching us live or whether you are catching the replay, make sure you have a pen and paper. Okay. So you can take your notes down because you don't want to miss this. Okay. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to let her go ahead and introduce herself. Miss Sheila.
Peace and blessings. So good to see you again, Ms. Jacqueline. Thank you so much for having me back. I'm really excited about today's topic, which is something very near and dear to my heart. It's about food and our relationship with food as a divine source. So before we get into that, it is important for people to know why this is such an important topic to me. So, my name again is Sheila Brown, and I am a divine life strategist and a divine health coach, which means I have two very powerful ways of helping sisters get to what I call a state of divine health. Now, divine health has a very specific definition. I think it's very important to define the terms and to explain the context for the terms. So when I say divine health, I'm not throwing out some term religiously or very loosely. I mean something very specific that relates to three aspects of our being: our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, and of course, our soul. So, divine health means being in excellent physical condition, possessing a sound mind, and experiencing spiritual balance at any age. I came to the conclusion that I was entitled to have divine health, but still I have to work really, really hard for it. Now, the difference between the entitlement aspect and the working hard for it aspect represents the fact that we live in a world full of contradictions. And this dichotomy means that as a daughter of the Most High, it is our birthright to experience the bliss of divine health, that our bodies are divine machines, and these divine machines are designed to give our animate our spirits in the physical world so that we can do something amazing here on behalf of the Most High, and that is to be a solution to a problem, to solve a problem, to be a woman of divine purpose. And that is why divine health is so critical and why it really only means something to women who recognize that they have a life worth living. And so people who make the connection between divine health and divine purpose have a strategic advantage, which leads me to the next prong of the work that I do with women in the world, because this connects to my own divine purpose. See, what I do is I help women get to a state of divine health so that they can fulfill their divine purpose in life. I'm very clear that that's what I was put on this planet to do. And so everything that I do and everything that I eat and every conversation that I have and every word that I use and every mission that I go on, whether it is to work to sustain myself or in conversation or social, it is geared around fulfilling and furthering my divine purpose in the world, which makes me a very dangerous woman because I know my value and I know the value of the people that need to be in my life. And so I'm a very consistent person. Now, I didn't arrive at that conclusion until I decided to get control of my health because in March of 2016, I came across a documentary that changed my life. And it was about a man who weighed over 300 pounds and had a horrible inflammatory disease that caused him to take over 19 medications a day. And this man did a 60-day juice fast. And at the end of that 60 days, he dropped 90 pounds and he completely reversed his condition and got off of his meds. And me at that time, I also was weighing 300 pounds or very close to it. And I was not experiencing inflammatory issues in the way that he was that caused me to take medication. But I was a very unhappy, a very miserable woman in almost every aspect of my life. I was socially a recluse, spiritually a recluse, and physically so uncomfortable that even sleep was a deprivation for me. I couldn't lay on my back because I felt like I was suffocating. My breasts were so heavy that it felt like pounds and pounds of bricks were laying on my rib cage. I couldn't sleep on my side effectively because that caused problems on both sides. And of course, sleeping on the stomach was an issue. So sleep deprivation was one of the biggest problems that I have. And as most people who know anything about weight gain and health know that you cannot properly metabolize your food or your energy or even burn fat effectively if you cannot sleep. Rest is a critical component in order to lose weight and to maintain the desired weight that you want to have. And so, because I was sleep deprived, I was extra stressed. In addition to all the things that make life difficult for the average person, I had the added disadvantage of being a woman who operates herself within a world of racism, within a world of oppression, in this invisible circumstances that no one can seem to pinpoint, but everyone knows exist. And so what that did for me and for many of the women who I speak to is it creates a life of instability, but worse, at an emotional level, at an economic level, at a spiritual level, it creates a vacuum that's filled with loneliness and even loneliness that translates into bitterness and also into confusion. And then this creates a cycle of behaviors that self perpetuate poor health, unattractiveness, and discontentment. I'm not the only woman who has dealt with this, but I know I'm probably the only woman who has made the connections to the circumstantial issues that we face being the daughters of the oppressive system of racism and also of being a victim of the ongoing, perpetuating invisible circumstances that still lead to many oppressive circumstances that make it virtually impossible for many of us to attain a level of comfort in life and sustain that for wealth transfer and intellectual and spiritual transfer. And so while there are very many seemingly successful women, seemingly happily married women, seemingly okay single women, many of us are dealing with a very heavy sense of loneliness, a feeling of a lack of protection, of financial insecurity, and it is driving many compulsive behaviors in our lives, whether that is overeating or what I call emotional eating, or seeking sexual gratification in all the wrong places with all the wrong people at all the wrong times and under all the wrong circumstances, or this over obsession with beauty and not feeling ever good enough, hair not long enough, eyelashes not thick enough, lips not thin enough, complexion.
Okay.
Or
For a
that
second there, the sound went out. The
okay.
last thing
Okay, I got you.
The last thing I think I heard was eyelashes not long enough, lips not thick enough.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So the point is that it creates a lot of problems or perceived problems that we then attempt to cope with in very unhealthy ways because we really don't know what the real issue is. No one has really ever sat with us and calmed our spirits and addressed honestly the conditions that we face as Black women, particularly so that we can thrive in the world and that we can know where we stand in relationship to the creator, in relationship to our spouses or our desired spouses and our children. And in fact, the opposite has been happening. We've been blamed for conditions that we did not create. We have been accused of being unhealthy, and no one seems to know why. We seem to have been suggest. It seems to be suggested that we have all of the chronic conditions for health problems, and no one can seem to figure out why. And then we have all of the problems associated with socioeconomic poverty or socioeconomic oppression, and no one can seem to figure out why. Why is I think we've lost me because I see that our page is still, but let me know if you can hear me or not. It seems
Now
like
I can hear you,
okay, okay,
but you were just sticking for a little bit, but I can hear you.
okay, perfect. So, just on my end, it just looked like it was stopped. So I just wanted to just make sure. But really, what I was trying to say is that there's some problems, and there are sometimes circumstances that seem beyond us, but there are also solutions. And I want to focus on solutions and I want to help the women who I come in contact with focus on the solutions, just like Queen Mother Harriet Tubman did, defied her circumstances, just like Queen Mother Harriet Jacobs did, the author of Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, defied her circumstances, just like Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer did, turned her tragedy into a story of divine purpose and compassion for her people. And just like Queen Mother Amy Garvey did, transform the entire world and everything that we know about it because she was a woman who was clear about what her purpose is. And so these are the women. And of course, we can't forget the Queen Mother Maggie Lena Walker, who embodied everything that is admirable that many people of today claim to profess to be able to represent, but really fall short when you look at the powerful examples of real women warriors, real women leaders, real women daughters of the Most High who did it and did it with dignity and did it with self-respect, did it with national respect, did it with, and when I say national, I mean with a race mind very clear that everything that they did impacted us as a people and our image as a people. And so
Hmm.
all of this is such a powerful tool and resource that we have at our disposal. And so what I have been given is the ability to see these hidden messages within our female matriarchs' lives, our queen mothers' lives, our female women leaders' lives, and use those things to enable to empower ourselves through food, through strategic lifestyles, and through purpose. So, I'm Sheila Brown, and like I said, I'm a divine life strategist and a divine health coach.
Let me just say, ladies, I'm very sorry. My nieces and nephews keep calling. I don't have a way of telling them to stop calling. So I do apologize. Trying to see if they were gonna call right back. Yeah, so I do apologize about that. Um, okay. So I am just, really, really thrilled just to, to have you on the show and to have you share your knowledge and your experiences with us.
Thank
So, that because I know we always dive into what is the why, how did you get to where you are? So that really, so this is a very personal experience for you. But let me ask you this. When you deal with your clients, well, two things. One, how do you normally start with them? Like, how do you walk them through the process? And two, since you've been working with what, in your business and working with different clients, are you finding that a lot of other women are having very similar or have had similar experiences in terms of their relationship with food as you did at one time?
Yeah, definitely. There's a common thread because there's a common history, and there's a common present as well, and I can instantly relate to it. So that's a really good question. It depends on how the woman came to me. So some women know that I have a course called How to Overcome Emotional Eating in 21 Days, a paradigm shift. And many women are conscious of the fact that they do have an unhealthy relationship with food and that they need to do something to overcome that unhealthy relationship. And so, women who want to do that and do it effectively from an African consciousness perspective have
You know what? It it seems like you kind of stuck for a minute there. And one of the young ladies put a comment. I was trying to read her comment to see if she was saying that she couldn't hear us, or
oh no, that would be terrible.
I'm just trying to make sure, but that's not letting me access my comments though. But you're back now. I was trying to remember what the last thing was that you said.
I said I was talking about my course on how to overcome emotional
Right,
eating.
okay.
And so the women who recognize that they have an unhealthy relationship with food that come to me because they have seen not only that I have really worked through the process of overcoming emotional eating, but mastering the relationship with food through the wisdom of our ancestors and through this knowledge base that I've acquired. So I have a 10-week program that I take those women through. And over the first 6 weeks of that program, we spend an intense amount of time studying. We spend an intense amount of time going over our defining what emotional eating is, the three types of emotional eating, understanding what triggers or what events trigger the unwanted feelings that lead to us wanting to cover those feelings and turning to food to do that, and using food basically as a drug, what I call food substance abuse, which is basically where you use food in a way that it was not intended to be used, or you overuse it as
Mhm.
a means of altering your mood. Again, that goes back to the unwanted feeling. And then that whole process of doing so begins to negatively interfere with your ability to do the everyday things needed to sustain life, going to work, participating in life, cleaning your home, organizing your life, paying your bills. You'll be surprised at how abusive we become with food. And it's so difficult to recognize it because it's perfectly normal to walk into a store and walk out with a bag of Cheetos or a bag of Doritos or a bag of
Mhm.
Twinkies or a gallon of ice cream. You don't look like a suspect. You don't look like a suspicious person. But when you get behind closed doors, that there is a problem. And that problem is not that different than the relationship that someone who would identify as a drug addict with an illicit drug has with
Right,
their substance, which might be crack cocaine or
right.
marijuana when it was illegal, or even legally, but just the inappropriate overuse or inappropriate mood altering uses of those foods instead of using food what it was designed to do. There is a spirit behind food. There is a spirit behind eating. And I want to help women understand that eating, the primary purpose of it is to create an environment in your body where you can draw on energy to sustain you so that you can fulfill your divine purpose. Whether that purpose is being the absolute best alert mother that you can be, a responsive mother, a compassionate mother, a good mother is one of many divine purposes, but it's not the only purpose.
Right.
But whatever your divine purpose in life is, has been revealed to you as a daughter of the Most High. Your food is designed to support you in fulfilling that mission. It's okay that you enjoy eating it, that it becomes a positive experience when you're doing it with family or friends over the holidays. But the majority of your eating experiences should be very intentional. It should be very nutritious. It should be sourced from the sun, and it should primarily be designed to consume food that sustains your body's functions. That means your heart has an important function. It needs certain nutrients. Those nutrients can be derived only from the sun. Everything that you eat has been sourced at some point from the sun. The closer you are to eating the sun, the healthier, the livelier, the more abundant the nutrients and the cellular rejuvenation will be in your body. In other words, when a beautiful cucumber grows from the ground, the cucumber itself, the part that we see, is represents just like our physical bodies, but that cucumber also has a spirit. And the cucumber spirit was fueled and animated by the life giving source of the sun. The sun is a gift from the Most High. The sun tells that cucumber important information. And when we eat that cucumber, we think we're eating the green and the white. We are. We're chewing, we're swallowing, it goes into our stomach, but we don't keep that green and white fiber. What we eat is the spirit of the cucumber. The part of the cucumber that cannot be seen is what we actually consume. We call it vitamins, we call it minerals, we call it phytonutrients. That represents the spirit of this plant that we're eating. And so once of course, in other words, the spirit is the unseen. And I spent a lot of time talking about this and explaining this almost to an annoyance, because if you can grasp this, then you will understand exactly why you need to be eating plants as the majority of your food source. Because the plants are the ones that carry the divine information from the sun. And the sun was a gift to us from the Most High. And everything about the sun is about translating powerful life force energy. And that sun information that is given to us through the plants that we consume goes through a beautiful natural process in our bodies so that we will eliminate the fibers, the part that we cannot consume, but we eat, but we cannot consume, we expel. And that part is the insoluble fiber. That represents the body of information that we look at, but it is not what we are consuming. Now, if a plant that we consume has a spirit, a sweet potato, a tomato, kale, collard greens, what, and that's in its whole state. How do we activate the spirit? Well, we do it with our intentions. So as we prepare the food, it's best that we prepare food that is in its whole state, that we can recognize and that we can touch. You want to see your food. You want to come in contact with your food, and you want to touch your food. And then you want to prepare your food very intentionally with a spirit of love, humility, and gratitude. And before you consume that food, you then bless it, and we call that grace. But all of that process is really designed to extract the spirit in a divine way from the food. Now, let's contrast that process from when we encounter a piece of meat that has been dead for 4 or 5 years, frozen, was taken out of the body of an animal who was tortured for 3 or 4 months, that was induced into expedient growth with human growth hormones, that is filled with antibiotics because the circumstances and the conditions of its living are so impure and toxic that it is a walking disease. And the hormones that have filled it are so massively unproductive and unhealthy for the animal that it can't even reproduce on its own. So there's no joy for the animal. It does not roam the earth like it was supposed to. It does not experience, in some cases, even the light of day. In some cases, the chickens that we are consuming never get to see outside. The chickens are so tormented and so abused and so psychologically damaged because our animals do experience psychological conditions. They experience depression. They experience psychotic episodes where they even go into pecking themselves because they can't move to the left and to the right because they're caged in. And they may go through this for the 3 or 4 months that they're supposed to be alive, the entire time. And then they're killed in such violent and brutal ways that they are actually afraid. And when an animal is anticipating death and afraid, it releases, just like human beings, a chemical compound in its bloodstream right before death. Just like when you go to the movie theater and you're scared out of your life, your body releases adrenaline. Well, in an animal, when they release whatever the animal equivalent of that adrenaline is, and I think it still is considered adrenaline, that hormone poisons the animal's body, poisons the blood, and then becomes a part of the psychic experience, the spiritual experience of the animal.
Okay, you went out there. Waiting to get her back, everybody. Yeah, internet is not our friend today. Technology, right? When it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't.
You're eating food. You are
Okay.
eating a food product, and it is a Franken food. It is a Frankenstein like food. It has no real vital purpose when it comes to doing anything that original plant that I described earlier. When a woman or a healthy man or a healthy woman walks up to a healthy tree and picks up a perfectly ripened apple, that apple is fulfilling its divine purpose when it's eaten. It was created for that purpose. And so if you go through the exact opposite and remove the process of even touching the plant, the tree, or the ground plant that it actually comes from, we're so far removed from that. You're so out of touch, and then you don't even get to see the source of the food. You don't get to hold the cabbage. You don't get to hold the potato that forms your
Mhm.
so-called French fry. You are so removed from the process of the food that you're eating, you don't know what you're eating. And to be honest, you don't even care.
It's not funny, but you're absolutely right. You don't know what you're eating,
You don't know
literally.
what you're eating, and worse, you don't know what it's doing to you. Black women, Black women reportedly experience obesity or chronic or morbid obesity at a rate higher than any other ethnic group and, and among gender than anyone else. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. It's a product of a lot of different things, but also Black women are more likely than anyone else to be inundated and surrounded and encompassed by fast food restaurants.
Mhm.
And so this is something that is socially engineered. This is not a natural occurrence of just good business. And I think I mentioned this to you before when we did our last interview. We have to start questioning our environment. Why are there so many fast food restaurants in our community specifically? Why do they thrive? Why are they subsidized by the government? If they're so productive, profitable, why do they have
I
to
didn't
be?
know they were subsidized by the government.
Yeah, many of the fast food restaurants are subsidized. And
Okay.
why is it that a pack of grapes that you buy in a grocery store costs $4.99 a pound, but you can get a whole steak or purportedly some kind of a beef sandwich for 99 cents? Does that even make sense? Does it make sense that an purportedly organic piece of fruit would cost 3 to 4 times more than the piece or pound of animal that makes up your burger. That's where the subsidized comes in. In order for the burgers and the chickens and the steaks and the food that you're eating to be so cheap, it has to be
You sticking. I'm waiting on it to come back in.
oh, okay,
Okay,
okay.
now you're back.
Okay, gotcha. So we have the unadded disadvantage of being the victims of very clever marketing. So even if you said, you know what, it's 2020, I want to eat better. I want to be more conscious about my body. I want to give my body what it deserves. Then you're driving down the street and you hear this little jingle, da 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 da, and you suddenly remember, oh, but those fries, oh, they're so good. Aren't they
Right.
vegan? Yeah, no, they're not. First of all, no, they're not vegan. They're not. I don't even know if they're plants anymore. But there are a lot of different things that are combating the
Mhm.
efforts that we have, in particular as Black women, with all the other elements, the brutality, the police killings, the economic instability, the job instability, the romantic instability, the war on Black men. All of these things are piling up, pile after pile after pile. Are they having tremendous, horrendous impacts on our spirits and on our bodies? And these are only compounded worse by our unhealthy relationship with food if they don't fuel the unhealthy relationship with food at all. So one of the things that I try to do is to get women through my course to overstand what it is they're dealing with, to take a look at the process that led us to this point. Long before we are even aware of it. And it even starts probably as early as 16, 19. I share with the women in my group what I call a Sankofa, where we actually go back into history and look at how was food used during slavery as a tool of oppression, humiliation, punishment, and reward. Because if you don't think that that has an impact on
Mhm.
your relationship with food today, you are absolutely wrong. You are absolutely dead wrong. And what you don't know can hurt you. I
Mhm.
shared with the ladies in my group, for example, the fact that even even the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, Booker T. Washington, made a statement in his autobiography, and he was describing that as a child, he was responsible for fanning away the daughters of the plantation owner that he was succumb or servant to or subservient to.
Mhm.
And he described a moment in time where they were eating these wonderfully delightful ginger cakes and how badly he wanted to taste one, how hungry he was to experience them, and that should he determine that should he ever get free, the height of his freedom, the purpose of his freedom would be to also enjoy those wonderful looking ginger cakes that those little white girls that he was fanning away the flies from was enjoying. Now, most people don't think of that as something
Mhm.
profound, but the founder of the Tuskegee Institute, one of our most profound thought leaders and transformative leaders, had this food experience that certainly had an impact on his relationship with food as he did achieve freedom. Did he translate any of that information into his life after freedom? Did he feel a sense of entitlement around sweets? Did he overindulge? Did
Mhm.
he feel, that he had to overcompensate in some areas? Well, I think it's revealing that he he didn't die of natural causes. In fact, there's a new book out that talks about the conspiracy to kill Booker T. Washington, and that he was poisoned, and he was poisoned through food. In fact, yeah, there's a
Really?
woman who wrote, and she went to the place where he had a meeting with some people from the Black community, the Black bourgeoisie at the time, who had real problems with his methodology and were very upset with him. And reportedly in this state, and I don't know if it was Louisiana or I can't remember what state it was, but the author of the book did this extensive research, and she found that these people conspired to meet with him at a restaurant in a hotel and to induce him into having a meal, that they paid a man from Jamaica to poison. And he ended up being so upset by the meeting that he left, but he took the food with him,
Mm, wow.
and it changed history. It changed history. And this is not fiction. This is actually a book. And unfortunately, I don't have the name of it in front of me, but I will happily share it with you when I get into my laptop. But what is the theme with food? And how relevant is food to life and death? Because that's
Yes.
what we're dealing with now. We are dealing with life and death. And for women in particular, it's so important for us to get an understanding of just how important it is, because many of us are so smart. We're not going to go into prostitution.
Right.
We're not going to take illicit drugs, you know. But what's stopping us from walking to a grocery store and pulling out that wonderful eclair from the frozen section, that box of eclairs with ice cream and
Mm-hmm.
yogurt and a pizza, and treating ourselves night after night after night as we cope with this loneliness that is encompassing us? What's pulling us? What's stopping us from doing it? In fact, are we entitled to it? And why should we be concerned? We, who were the victims of slavery and abuse, why do we have to be concerned about some animals and the way they are treated? That's not our problem. We should never be accosted with the condition of animals. Do you know what our people have been through? Well, that's the attitude that many of us take. That we don't have to be concerned about the source of our meat, the source of our food, that we don't need to know the details about the dairy and how it's pasteurized and why it's pasteurized and what is actually happening in our grocery stores. And what does it mean that your food is sourced by zip code? And why is there seeming to be such a difference in the quality of the food that you get in your Black communities versus when you stumble into more affluent communities that are predominated by white people? Why is there such a stigma between shopping in Black centers versus white centers? Is there some hidden, unspoken rule, message, or story there that we are trying to ignore or not paying attention to? And then further, how does that impact us physically? Is there a link between the obesity epidemic, the diabetic epidemic, the chronic heart disease, the chronic kidney disease, the inflammation, the mental fog, and all of the related conditions that are affecting our lives and the food we eat? I had a conversation with the Most High, and I was saying to myself, as a daughter of the Most High, how could this setup be so unfair? How could this dynamic between power and powerlessness, between wealth and poverty, between control and lack of control, how could this be in the world so unfair that my people would be at the mercy of people who don't care and who are strategically positioned to do harm in many harmful and unspoken ways, and then to monitor that harm? And we are so disadvantaged. And you know what the answer I got was, Queen?
What?
It was, you're not powerless. You just don't like the tools that you have available because they require self sacrifice, they require self discipline. Your tools, your fighting weapons are fasting, our self control, our self monitoring, our prayer, and things that we don't want to do and don't want to think of as having to do outside of some, grand one time a year church experience or religious experience. That in fact, fasting is something that you should be doing on a regular basis, and in fact must do, not just because it helps to rejuvenate the body. It creates a condition and environment in your body that tells your cells, okay, it's time to start all over again. It's time to rejuvenate. It's time to eat up the old damaged cells. It's time to
Mm.
clear out the cloudiness that is affecting us, that leads to cancers and disease. And it's time to activate. We've got a break.
I
That's
remember
what
you talking about that last time, that the powerfulness of the intermittent, what was it, intermittent fasting, right?
intermittent fasting, yes, and all kinds of fasting, and doing it on different levels of intervals. And so I'm a proponent of women fasting. Now, I'm not trying to give medical advice because I know there's someone saying, I can't fast. My doctor said, okay, okay. Your doctor also said, stop eating, you know, a lot of sugary fats, but you still seem to do that. But when it comes to self discipline, people will throw the book at you, honey. Don't you tell people to do no fasting? Their doctor might subscribe. Well, doesn't that same doctor say stop eating sugar? You still seem to be able to do that. So there's this hypocrisy that
Mm.
anything that invokes a sense of self responsibility within us, that requires
Mm.
us to self regulate and to self monitor and to deprive ourselves of a little bit of comfort and joy and luxuries and indulgence, that needs to be monitored more heavily than what you're doing when no one is looking, that is really doing the harm.
Right.
So it's a little irritating for me in that respect. But yes, when the answer that I got was, you have powerful tools. You have powerful tools at your disposal. You just don't like what they are. And
Mm.
until we start to manipulate the tools that are given to us, the water, the air, the breathing that we can do, the fasting, and the earth, we're supposed to be eating earth. And if you cannot control and grow your own earth, the least you can do is go get whole foods,
Mm.
touch those foods, prep those foods, cleanse those foods, cook those foods with humility and a spirit of gratitude, and feed them to the people that you love. That's the least that you can do. That's your job as a daughter of the Most High. But you've got to know that that's your job, and you have to have a sustained purpose, a reason for being. Otherwise, you'll say, well, macaroni and cheese, ham hock, and collard greens is a part of my heritage, and I'm just honoring my ancestors by eating this way. It's something that's been passed down. Well, our ancestors didn't eat like that because they wanted to. They ate
Mm.
like that because they had no choice. And so the way you honor them is by taking the best of their intentions, queen. What made their food so good was not the ingredients, but their intentions to make the best and to bring joy and satisfaction and nurturing and healing with what is available to them. Now you take collard greens and you take carrots and you take sweet potatoes, because those are divinely wonderful whole foods, and you use them in a way that is sustainable for your cellular rejuvenation, so you can be energized to do the work. What we're fighting for is energy. If you're
Mm.
eating food that makes you feel exhausted at the end of that process, then that is not divinely prepared food. That is not a food that is meant to sustain your divine purpose. It should not take all of your energy out of you. It should fuel you with energy. And there's so many things that you can do. I have a cookbook that teaches you beautiful recipes that you can make that are gluten free and plant based and absolutely delicious, but they require intention and time. And now people will say, well, I can't afford organics. No problem. There was a study done back in the 90s, very few people know about, early 2000s, that showed that there is a way to cleanse your vegetables using a common household ingredient that just about every Black woman has in her household, and it's baking soda. You
Right.
can
I've heard of that.
literally remove up to 96% of the pesticides off of the surface of the skin of most vegetables and fruit and underneath the first layer of the skin, simply by soaking those conventional vegetables in baking soda for 30 minutes, queen.
For 30 minutes.
Did
Okay.
you hear what I said?
Okay.
They tested bleach, dishwashing detergent, they tested apple cider vinegar or vinegar, and they tested baking soda, the most effective agent.
The
was
baking soda.
baking soda. So
Okay.
I'm telling you, you can get conventional vegetables, feed your family, but you have to do the work. You got to care enough to clean your vegetables, to prep them up, to set them up in advance, to soak them for 30 minutes, to rinse them thoroughly, and then to cook them.
I have been using apple cider vinegar. Um, but like you said, everybody has baking soda. And you said 30 minutes? Just soak it in it for
Use
30
as
minutes?
little as 1 ounce of baking soda to 100 ounces of water.
1 ounce. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I have the formula in my book. My book is called Sometimes Raw, Sometimes Cooked, Always Divinely Prepared. It has 21 plant-based recipes that are gluten-free. And I not only explain how to remove those pesticides, but I show you
Uh-oh. It went out again. No, she's sticking. Okay. Yeah. Internet.
lose you.
Okay.
Did I lose you? Are you there?
Yep. Not for too long though.
Okay. Well, what I was saying is that in my book, I talk about not just how to cleanse the vegetables, but I share the study that you can find to reference the study to see what they actually did and what the results were, and then I
Okay.
teach you the steps to make a divinely prepared meal because there is a such thing as divine meal preparation. And I learned that from years of cooking, but also years of reflecting on my own grandmother, who was an amazing cook, who loved cooking, and she had a special relationship with collard greens. My grandmother cooked the best pot of collard greens and had the most delicious pot liquor. And then listening to the stories that she used to tell me about food, like my grandmother talked about how even as babies in the South, they would feed the babies the pot liquor. Now that sounds harsh, but pot liquor is just the water which contains some of the vitamins that would spill out from the collard green
From the
leaves
greens. Mm-hmm.
into the broth. Basically, it was a broth, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the children were supplemented if their mother's milk wasn't readily available. They would feed them collard greens. I mean, the what they
The
call broth,
broth. Mm-hmm.
and it's a very delicious thing. But my grandmother was so intentional about cooking. I mean, she would say one day, I think I want me some greens. And you knew after being with her for a while that you weren't going to get greens that night. You might not even get them for the next 7 days. But when she got ready to actually cook those greens, it was such a process that she had to think about it for a couple of days.
Okay. This
And they
internet
would
is
spend 30 minutes just doing that. And so finally, we would get them home, and then the real work began because she had this double sink, and she would fill it up with, of all things,
mm-hmm.
how I survived this, but she filled it up with Tide detergent. And she would always say that washing collard greens was like washing clothes. And you would hear women in the South take that posture. And she would wash those things for days. And she
Mm-hmm.
had this spotless, philosophy about her food. She didn't want to have a grit of dirt. There could be no live insect or dead insect. She went through this cleansing process, and it took, I swear, like 2 days just to do that.
Wow.
And then finally she would cook them. And then we would get a pot of greens that was like this big, but man, they were so wonderful. They were
Mm-hmm.
so delicious. And I learned to honor my grandmother's process, although I was terrified of cooking greens and terrified of eating anyone else's because she made me realize that anyone who doesn't do this is not worthy of eating their food. And my grandmother had a spotless kitchen. And so what I learned from that over the years was that my grandmother was very intentional about cooking and eating. And
Mm-hmm.
she loved us so much that only the best of what she could
Mm-hmm.
afford, she wasn't a
Wow.
very wealthy woman, but what we did have and our staple was collard greens. She would do her sweet potato pie, and everything was from scratch and everything was intentional, and it was always so delicious, and it wasn't always the healthiest of food. Yes, she used pork in her collard greens, but where there was a lack in terms of nutrition, there was an
Mm-hmm.
overabundance in terms of love, in terms
Okay.
of intentionality. And when you ate my grandmother's food, you felt wonderful, you felt nourished, you felt energized. That's an example of a divinely prepared meal. It's a meal that is intended to feed your body, physically nourish you, and your spirit or soul. And I got that from a book by a man named Khalil Gibran. This is one of my favorite books. It's by a Lebanese poet, and he was a philosopher. He was a spiritual man, and he had these wonderful sayings. And one of his sayings was around food. And he said oftentimes when people would ask him about these topics, he would say these most profound things about work or about food. And one of the things that struck me years ago was a statement he made.
We went out.
Feeds but half man's hunger. Isn't that incredible?
You know what? I'm so sorry. You went out again.
Oh, okay. What was the last thing you heard me say? Did you hear me when I
Just
said,
was that incredible? No, I heard you when you first showed us the book,
okay,
and then after that you went out.
okay. So in the book, he talks about, someone asked him, tell us about work. And he makes this profound statement that affected everything I do in life now. It's such a beautiful statement. He said, work is love made visible. And if you cannot work with love but indifference, it is better that you leave your work and take alms of those who work with joy. For if you bake a bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And when I thought about what he was saying and the way I was cooking at the time and people's responses, they didn't always enjoy my food. And when I changed, I just tweaked my attitude about the way I made food based off of that one statement that if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter
Mm.
bread that feeds but half man's
Oh,
hunger. What he's saying is that there's two aspects to
right,
human hunger. One is spiritual, and it is addressed only by love and by the intention when you are making food, and the other is physical. That's where we talk about the actual nutrients that you're giving someone in the food, the
hmm,
wholesomeness of the grains, the wholesomeness of the vegetables, even meat if you eat it. But there's something very specific about meat that we're not paying attention to, and that is there were, even in monotheistic religions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, they all have the same foundation about meat and the sacrifice of animals. And that an animal was supposed to be killed so intentionally and under such sacred circumstances that the animal was never supposed to know that it was about to lose its life.
okay,
In fact, even the equipment that was used to slay the animal had to be so sanctified and so sharp that the animal almost, and I can never attest to this, I would never declare to say it, but the animal was almost supposed to just walk into death without
right,
being tortured. In other words,
okay,
one slit of the
right,
throat was
mm-hmm,
supposed to do it. And you were supposed to look that animal in the eye and calm that animal.
right,
And why does that happen? So that, remember what I said, the adrenaline
yes,
that the animals
mm-hmm,
release when they're afraid. Now, contrast to what we see today in factory farming,
right,
where the cows are being pushed into a blood drenched environment where they know that they are about to lose
right,
their lives in an extremely violent way, that they're crying. Some animals are even seen backing up and trying to escape.
right,
They're gutted alive or they're brutally killed. Who wants to eat that? If you
right,
saw someone on the street brutalizing an animal with fire and with a rod, you would not eat that.
right.
But because you don't see it, you think that it's
I
okay to
think it
eat.
doesn't happen or it's okay, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so then you even satisfy yourself, much like during slavery, the so called compassionate people from the North would sometimes take a trip down to the South and would be satisfied with just a proclamation, a commercial of a Negro slave or an enslaved woman or man saying, oh, we happy. We're not
Right,
being hurt. We
right,
love being enslaved. So
right.
isn't that the same thing
Same thing, yeah,
when you walk into a grocery store, and not to be offensive to my ancestors, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the strategy of appeasing ourselves with knowing someone is being tortured or knowing that there is wrong happening and being appeased by just the same interest, the
Right.
same financial interest telling you that the animals are fine. Look, we
Right.
have a picture of a chicken here and it's happy. Look at this
Right.
picture. And we
Mm-hmm.
call it cage free eggs or
Right.
roam, free range
Right. Free range.
or
Yep.
grass fed beef. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
lie. It's
Yep.
a whole lie. And you're wearing it in your cells, you're wearing it around your heart, you're
Right.
wearing it on your knees, you're wearing it in your rubbery, leathery skin.
Right.
When you go and get that diagnosis from diabetes or heart disease, it's
Yep.
not an accident. It's no mystery.
Right.
You know what the science is about the food and the animals
Mm-hmm.
and the state and the condition that you're eating it. You
Mm.
do nothing about it.
Yep.
We've got to stop it. And that's my job, to bring this spiritual awareness about your food. Spiritual,
Spiritual awareness
that's
about your food.
the
Wow.
divinity of food for the divine woman who, and why do I focus on women? Because when you educate a woman, as they say, you educate a nation.
You educate a village. Yep.
Her children will be impacted. Her
Mm-hmm.
husband, her spouse, her family members, her extended family, your community. Because the women are the ones that are going into the churches and
Yep.
bringing their recipes into the Sunday brunch. They're the
Mm-hmm.
ones who are cooking after church. They're the ones who are feeding their
Yep.
families.
That's right.
And
Well,
when they're not available to do it, our families go and turn to fast food. And what's worse is when we turn to fast food.
right. You know,
Fast.
I'm sorry. It's a lot going on here in the background. and then
I'm not affected by a queen. Don't worry
and
about
we
it.
and we keep, I hope I hope it doesn't impact the listeners, and I know you keep sticking and going in and out. Um so just leave us with how they can find you. I mean, I put Sheila Brown Speaks. Just, whatever you want to say to kind of, close out, let the ladies know how they can find you. And what was the other thing I was going to say? How they can find you and any upcoming programs that you have. I know you touched on it throughout, but I want you to just kind of summarize it before we close out.
Thank you, Queen. Again, I'm so humbled that you invited me back. I love coming on your show. I love sharing this information. I think it's so vitally critical right now because I do firmly believe that we have a lot more control than we do. And once we get a handle on our health through how we manage our relationship with food, all the other things in life also fall in place. And I tell the women in my course this all the time. So there's three things I want people to do. Follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Sheila Brown Speaks and Facebook for the same. Go to my website and sign up to get my free ebook called Divinity Soup and Ancestor-Inspired Recipes. Download that book, read it, and get an understanding, an introduction to the concept of divinely prepared meals, and also try that amazing recipe that I was inspired to make by my grandmother's collard greens, but one that is suitable for someone whether they are a vegan or are gluten free or just love collard greens. You're not going to go wrong with this recipe. It's delicious, it's nutritious, and it's honoring the legacy of our ancestors and their divine intentions with this amazing food that God gave to us that helps sustain our bodies during our enslavement and captivity in this country. And then also consider signing up for my course, How to Overcome Emotional Eating in 21 Days, a Paradigm Shift. This course will change your life. This course is powerful. If you email me at info@Sheila Brown Speaks, or if you go to my Instagram page, you can get in contact with me. I do require that you have a discovery call so we can make sure that this is a good fit for you because it's not for everyone. Um, I'm doing my course 4 more times this year before I digitize it. So the next round is March 19th. And I take 15 women each time in order to have a small enough group so I can do the coaching. And then I also am learning from the ladies about the best way to deliver the content. So this is a beta course, and it has been such a profound impact on the women who are taking the course and on me as well, because I'm fulfilled by sharing this knowledge. And man, do we go over some powerful information. You learn the secrets of food from the perspective of our ancestors, Queen Mother Harriet Tubman and Queen Mother Harriet Jacobs and Queen Mother Amy Jack Garvey. We learned some very powerful food stories of our enslaved ancestors and what their thoughts were about what they were eating, and how food just wasn't a priority when it came to freedom and your chance to escape freedom. And people who were attached to food oftentimes didn't take advantage of the opportunity to escape. This is directly connected to our current day relationship with food and why we need to master our circumstances so that we can have dominion and power over our bodies, minds, and spirits and fulfill our divine purpose. We are in a fight for energy. And when we eat the foods that fulfill the work that we have to do that helps support it, and at the same time brings joy to the people that we love and ourselves, it's a winning, winning, winning battle. It's just all winner, all around win. And so we also go over the environmental factors that are impacting and hindering the reason why the beach diet, the cocoa diet, the keto diet don't work for you in the long run. It's because if you don't take a total holistic perspective that includes your economic, your financial, even your political circumstances, you will not figure out why you can't sustain the things that you have been trying to sustain around your health. We cover that. We also cover how to acquire a divine health mindset, because remember, divine health has a very specific definition. It's about being physically excellent condition, possessing a sound mind, and experiencing spiritual balance. What are the tools for that? How do you do that? What is the steps that you take for doing that? There's a lot of things that you can do. And I talk about defensive eating and offensive eating. It's a very powerful knowledge base. You need to know what foods that you should be eating to combat the cancers that are just in the air that we breathe, right? You should not wait until you get a diagnosis. You should eat like you've gotten a diagnosis, because that's how you prevent diagnosis that you don't.
Makes
And then
sense.
we also go over what I call a few tools, which was a wonderful insight that was downloaded into me from the Most High, inspired by the wisdom of the ancestors, about how we use air, fire, earth, and water, which is a powerful, beautiful resource that is still available to us no matter what your economic condition is. And it's just a plethora of divine information that can only empower you. There is no wrong in this course. And so I think if you can enroll in the March 19th one, if you can connect with me about how to do that, it's going to transform your life, no doubt. If you're in the DC area, I have exciting news, because I'm launching Queendom Care LLC, and that is where I will be providing personal care services to support your divine food journey and your divine health journey by working with your head. I do a head cleanse. I do support women through their vaginal cleanses, and I support women through their foot work, what I call a foot cleanse. And those are the areas that connect our whole bodies. It's not about beautification. It's about being elevated, centered, and grounded. And it's a powerful strategy that, when combined with the divine health strategies that I teach you in my courses and in my coaching, you're going to be unstoppable. The
Wow,
other thing,
I love it.
what I really enjoy, all this is just to get the energy that we need so that I can do what I really enjoy doing, which is strategic planning for men and women, helping you define your values, your purpose, and then execute a strategic plan that will help you blow out your goals year after year after year.
I
So
love it.
that's
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Miss Sheila Brown. Sheila Brown Speaks. Thank you so much for coming on the show a second time.
thank you for
I'm
having
pretty
me.
sure we will definitely, or I'm going to stay in contact with you. So, ladies, if you have any questions or concerns, her website is right here in the narrative. Go ahead and, like she said, link up with her, get on that discovery call, confirm that it's a good fit, and just make that commitment and just move forward. So thank you so much. Again, it's been a pleasure. It's been just great. I learned so much from you every time that we speak.
Thank you. And can
So,
I also leave my number for the
yep.
list? It's
Hmm.
301-388-5273.
Okay.
That's 301-388-5273. So I look forward to.
And thank you, everyone. And hopefully, I apologize, but you know how the internet and technology is. Sorry about the technical difficulties that we had. But if you have any questions or concerns, definitely reach out to her, go to her website, or either you can leave them here in the comments. Okay. So thank you again. I'm your host of A Queen's Roundtable Show, Jacqueline Kabah Harrison, which happens every second and fourth Sunday of the month. Tune in. So everyone have a wonderful afternoon. You too, Sheila, and good talking with you. I will talk to you again soon. And ladies, like I said, have a good, wonderful rest of the afternoon. Okay, take care, everybody.
Peace and blessings,
Bye.
family. Take care.